Brown Bag Business Chat, lunchtime marketing and development topics to chew on, presented by Blue Steel Solutions. Welcome to this week's Brown Bag Business Chat. I have Miss Amy Donohue with the Fab Social here today. So Amy, if you would introduce yourself, tell us what you do and who you do it for.
Well, I am Amy Donohue. I have been involved in social media since 2004. I started with MySpace because I'm a stand-up comedian. And I realized that by interacting with people and not just friending them on MySpace, by actually being social, that it worked. So I was on Twitter in 2008, and I lost my job in the middle of doing something huge, and a Twitter follower hired me the next day, and that's when I actually started doing social media for a living, and that was 3.5 years ago. And they had a huge layoff 2.5 years ago, and the social media position was not important for the company to go on. And my boss just said to me, he's like, you know what, you need to start your own business and do this for yourself. And at the time I was 41 and thinking, oh my God, I have no job. All right, I'm going to start my own business because I know what I'm doing. And so I've had clients. My longest client is, I've had them for 3 years. I do their Facebook and Twitter. So basically I manage social media for a lot of different brands and industries, but I also coach. So if a small business owner, like, they might have a receptionist who has some time to be able to update Facebook or do some tweets, but they just don't know how to do it properly. So I go in and do training, and I do those a couple times a week. I really like doing that. So yeah, I'm just a social media junkie, and it works. I mean, as we're going to find out, social media is actually a really good thing.
So a lot of people, especially in my audience, who are maybe business owners or a sales manager, marketing directors, people who have been around for quite a while, but maybe not as familiar with social media. Can you give them your definition of what social media is? Because I think there's a lot of different ways that people really perceive it.
Well, I think the first thing people, as soon as they hear social media or Twitter, they just like clench up. And there's, they're scared because they just don't really understand it. And, I ask people in my workshops, who thinks Twitter is stupid? And everyone raises their hand. They're like, well, people just tweet about what they had for breakfast. To me, social media is that first word, social. And I think we've heard the phrase social media so much over the past several years that people forget that there's an actual word in there called social. And if I ask people, what does the word social mean to you? They're like, oh, it's Facebook, posting stuff. I'm like, no, if you go to a dictionary and look up the word social, what's it going to say? And you can see this like light bulb go off above their heads like, oh, social media. Social media is doing what we're doing right now.
So it's all about the people, right?
It's about the people. It's about talking with people, building relationships, because you and I don't know each other. We've never met, but we've been on social media together for a couple years, so we actually do know each other. We know a lot about each other, you and me. Maybe too much after this morning's conversation. But it's about building relationships. It's also about building your brand. Who do you want to be online? My sister is an editor, and she's starting to freelance. She's been a stay-at-home mom for almost 12 years now. So she wants to freelance. She's done editing in the past, but my sister is very formal. She's kind of prim and proper, obviously, the exact opposite of me. But I told her that, on your Twitter account, you don't have to have a professional headshot. She's a triathlete. Have that as your profile picture. You've got to be real. You have to be a person that people are going to want to talk to. If everything is crisp and clean and overly professional and you paid $500 for these headshots, you're not genuine. Who's going to want to talk to that person at a party?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that that's a really good point about being yourself and being the person behind the brand. And I want to get more into that in a little bit. But before we go there, I know social media and Twitter especially has a very special meaning for you. So before we move on, just kind of talk a little bit about what's happened in your life because of your connections on social media, because of the relationships that you have. How has that maybe taken you for a little bit of a roller coaster ride in your life?
I don't think roller coaster ride. I don't think there's a more perfect word than that for me when it comes to social media. I had about 4 years ago, actually about 5 years ago, Kirti and I started following each other, and tweeting about dumb stuff like yoga and restaurants and everything like that. And she was very open about her mom's kidney disease, and I had liked the Facebook page. And then 4 years ago, this coming January, I saw a tweet that completely changed my life, and she was in a conversation with someone talking about how her mom finally agreed to be put on the transplant list for kidney. And I knew nothing about kidneys, nothing, absolutely nothing. When I say that, I know that they're in your back, and that in wrestling, a lot of people get their kidneys punched and they pee blood for a couple days. That's all I know. I knew nothing about donating a kidney, and I volunteered. And we ended up to the very second that I was cut open and prepped for surgery being a match the entire way. We're different races, different cultures, but I saw a tweet and I donated my kidney because of a tweet. So in April 2011, I donated my kidney to Tiny Mom, and that changed my life because of the connections and actually interacting with people on Twitter. A restaurant from Scottsdale delivered me food when I got out of the hospital. I'd never eaten there, but we tweeted. They'd seen our story and seen the whole thing, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't do Twitter the right way, which is social media. And to me, Twitter is just a huge networking event. But back to how it's changed my life. Since then, I have filmed a documentary, and I went with a filmmaker across the country. We drove about 8,000 miles. We went from here in Phoenix to Vegas to LA to Boston and back in 20 days, interviewing other kidney donors who I met via social media to show people that we're happy, we're healthy, we live normal lives with one kidney, because people don't understand that. People think that, oh, your recovery is awful. So by showing that, more people will do what we did, which is to save a life. So basically, because of Twitter, I saved a life. And I have 2 Twitter followers who donated their kidneys because of me. I get a little choked up at this part, but I have a big enough following that I have a voice, and those people have been behind me since the moment I said I would do this, and they've donated money to our documentary, and they email me or send me messages on Facebook. How's everything going? How's Tiny Mom? These people I haven't met face to face, but because I'm social, they care. I know how their kids are. I know a lot about you and your family. Because it's about making friends and building relationships. I tell people that Facebook is everyone you know. Friends, family, coworkers, high school reunion. Twitter is everyone you want to know. It's you're new to a networking event, and you can't just go in there and blast your business cards all over the place and go up to someone and say, hey, do you need to buy a used car? You're not going to get invited to the next party if you're like that on social media. You walk around the room, you hear someone talking about football, or tonight is American Horror Story, Sons of Anarchy, Walking Dead. You hear people talking about that, you jump into the conversation like, how about them cards? That's all that Twitter is, and I think that people overcomplicated it. They're like, Twitter, oh my God, it's so scary. Really? And you can be on Facebook with your event invites, your apps, your games, and the algorithm that's complete BS. You're okay with that, but you're not okay with just talking to people? So I think there's just a really big misperception about what Twitter actually is.
That's interesting that you say that. It kind of makes me think of, like, if you picture the standard sales guy in the Mad Men era, of if his daughter gets married, everybody that he sells to, all of his clients are going to be at that wedding, right? It was a very close-knit community of the people that you worked with and that you sold to or bought from weren't just people that you did business with. They really became your friends and part of your family. And it's almost like Twitter gives us an opportunity to do that all over again, but kind of in a much better way, because your network can be that much bigger. You don't have to actually be in the same city or in the same town to enjoy the relationships you can build with each other. You can, like you said, across the country, across the world, have these really meaningful relationships with people that you may end up doing business with at some point. So to kind of bring this, the personal impact, I think is very clear, but it's also something that I think scares people a little bit, because they think I'm tweeting for my business, so I don't want to get so personal that it's all about me. How do you handle that predicament with clients? So how do you teach them to bridge that gap between this is me and this is my brand?
Well, I have a newish client who's a lawyer. One of the top worst industries on Twitter, because a lot of them are just very automated and they don't talk. They're not social at all. And she was kind of scared. She's like, well, I'm just starting out with this practice and I don't want to scare people off. And I walk into her office. She's got a lot of mid-century furniture in there. She's one of those people that has a treadmill and has her computer set up in front of her on the treadmill. That's cool stuff, and it's part of who she is. So she has to put that out there, because you don't know if one of your followers ends up being like me. I'm a mid-century architecture fanatic because I live in Central Phoenix and there's a lot here. A couple of her followers might be interested in that stuff too. She might get business because of that. I get business sometimes just because of something I do. Like, people love stand-up comedians, so people will be like, you're a stand-up comic. I want to do this too. Is this okay to tweet? Yeah, it's okay to tweet a picture of yourself at a comedy club. We're all here to laugh and show our personality. So you can't be stiff, because if you go to a networking event and you're face-to-face and you're stiff, no one's going to want to talk to you. You're a wallflower. They're going to be like, who is that boring person and who invited them? So if you're the same way on Twitter, no one's going to want to follow you. No one's going to want to interact with you. You have to bring your personality. You have to be yourself. Your Twitter account is yourself. And I've told you before, I make no bones about the fabulous one. I won't edit myself. And all my clients are friends or referrals of friends. So nobody seems to care that I swear and talk about whatever on Twitter. It works for me because it's transparent. I'm not trying too hard. I'm just being myself, and people appreciate that, because there's so much fake out there. There are a lot of fake people and, fake accounts. It's just, you got to be real. You got to be yourself. You got to sit back a little bit and take a breath and relax, like, remember, you're at a party. And you have to imagine that you're there in person. And if that's what you have to do the first few times you actually get on Twitter, then do it. Visualize all these people and picture them in different groups.
Except it's easier because you don't have to actually walk up and interrupt a group of people. You can just add to the conversation.
It's easier because you don't have to wear pants. That's my motto. I'm not wearing pants right now. I told you, I was rushing around this morning to get ready, and I'm like, okay, I don't need to take a shower for this because no one can smell me. As long as I look good from here up. So that's it, but I say that to people all the time. Twitter's fun because you don't have to wear pants.
So, kind of getting back to that, bridging the gap between I'm a person, but I also am participating in this not just because it's fun and because I want to meet a lot of people, but because I need it to help my business. How do you bridge that gap between having casual conversation, building relationships with people, and then at some point either directing them back to a website, letting them know what you do in the right way, having some sort of, I don't want to say call to action because that's not the right way to think about social media, but how do you do that eloquently where you're putting yourself out there and building relationships but also getting business from it for yourself and for your clients?
Well, I mean, just like I was saying earlier, when you're at an event and you start talking to people, eventually after a couple minutes of conversation, they're going to say, so Amy, what do you do? People are going to ask you. If you have your bio set up properly with your website, that's fine. If you tweet out stuff that are articles, so back to my divorce lawyer, I tweet a lot about relationships, divorce, single mom, single parents, I should say, because that's what I do. And when people go to your profile and they see your tweets, they see what you're about, and then they see the conversations you're having with other people. You can use hashtags to search for subjects so that you're in that industry or whatever, talking about that subject matter. I think people worry too much about ROI in social media. And Gary Vaynerchuk, who is at Gary VEE on Twitter, Gary V is God. Gary V is a lot. We're both from the East Coast. He's very brusque. He's very to the point. And he has said it perfectly, and I can send you a link to send out to people if they want. And he says, well, what's the ROI of your mom? Because it's two different things. You can't put an ROI on your mom. You can't put an ROI on your brand all the time. Yeah, you can track traffic to your website. You can track your follower growth and things like that. But when it comes to building relationships, you can't put that on paper. I can go through a list and write all my friends down, but what does that mean? It means absolutely nothing unless I'm building the relationship with them. So I think people need to step back a little bit and not worry so much about making money, because that will come. My year last year was awful, terrible. I had a lot going on, and for the social media business, and I was making the film and everything. But this year I kind of sat back a little bit and didn't tweet out my website as much, and I just had more fun. And 2 months ago I had to hire an assistant. I'm not doing anything except for this right now, and my business is booming. I'm not worried so much about the money, because when you have that in the back of your mind when it comes to friends and business relationships, it's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, that's a hard one for people like me who are very analytical and data-driven to take a step back and say, I'm doing this because it's good for my business. I might not be able to see an exact return. I might not be able to track the exact metrics. I can create some goals, but it's going to be really hard to track my progress against those because of the nature of how it works. So that's a really good point, to just let that go. And I sometimes talk with my clients about this when they ask, well, how does the time spent on social media pay itself back? And I say, well, what's the ROI on your chamber membership? What's the ROI on your BIN membership? Nobody knows. It's really hard to define that. And I think that because those other things have been around for so long, we just kind of know that they're important and that we're not going to be able to track an ROI, but they're still important. But social media is so new that we're trying to really, put a lot of analytics around it. So we do have a question, and before I read this, I do want to just let people know that we are answering questions throughout this show. You can either, if you're watching the live hangout, you can use the questions app, which should be over to the right-hand side of your screen, or if you want to send those questions through Twitter, you can use the hashtag BBBchat. So our first question, I'm going to select this so you should be able to see it also, is from Nick Augustine. And he says, social media activity also improves search engine visibility, and some business owners like to use social media to share their library of content and resources, like being at the networking event with vendors also there. That's how some see it. Do you?
What was that first part again because I got some tweets at the same time. I'm sorry. I'm going to pay.
He's saying that, some social media activity is good for SEO.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So sometimes using social media to share your own articles and resources is a good way to let people know what you do. And he wanted to know if that's something that you agree with.
Yes. In fact, the more activity you have on social media, the more your brand name is out there, the more aware people are going to be, and it really does help your SEO. I'm not an SEO expert, but I do know that the more people talk about Amy Donohue online, like I get Google alerts on myself, the more it helps my website because it just raises you up higher the more people are talking about you. It doesn't matter where they're talking about you. It does help your SEO, and that's more of a question for you because, like I said, I don't do websites, I don't do SEO, I don't do PR, I do social media.
I like that you make that definition too, because a lot of times people think that anyone that works on a computer kind of does everything. Like I get a lot of leads from an IT company because people just assume, oh, well, you must do websites, you must be able to help me with a marketing plan, and you can make my logo, right? We don't all do everything, and that's a really good definition to make because if someone is saying that they can do everything under the sun from you, they're going to produce your videos, they're going to do your social media, they're going to do your SEO, they're your development firm, unless they have a lot of staff, that chances are they're not going to do that job very well. So on the SEO side, I will go ahead and plug our mutual friend Pam Ongst with Pam and Marketing. She would be definitely the go-to person for those SEO questions, but I will say that we also see a lot of benefit, especially with Twitter and Google+, with sharing content and having that indexed as well.
And you don't have to be on every platform. So, well, back to we don't all do anything. I had someone ask me if I could do their web development, social media, and graphic design. And here's the thing with me. I could learn all the basics of all of that and offer that as a service, or it could be really good at one thing. I don't think that we need to do everything. I have my name out there. I'm putting my reputation on the line. I'm going to do great at one thing. I'm not going to do mediocre at a bunch, and that goes back to you don't have to do it all. When I see people I know who do it all, their work is not that great because they're spreading themselves too thin. They don't have a staff. It's just them.
Right. So kind of moving forward here because we're starting to run a little bit short on time, tell me about the one habit you see all the time in social media that you wish people would just break.
Oh, God. I really, we're talking about, let's just keep it as businesses. Cross-posting has got to be the most deadly practice any brand can do. And what cross-posting means is your Facebook posts go to Twitter or your tweets go to your Facebook. That is the worst thing that anyone can do because they're so different. You can't say the same thing. And if you're on one of them posting to the other, that means you're not on the other to answer questions or tweets or something like that. Cross-posting, that's very 2008. If you want your business to be stuck in 2008, by all means, keep doing it. If you want to be cool and make business and build connections and be social, stop cross-posting. I'm obviously very passionate about that. Oh my God, I want to stab somebody right now.
Okay. So we have another question. Sorry, you're very laugh today. So we have a question from Jonathan House who says, I've never really been able to see an increase in business just on social media. I've only seen what you've been talking about, or what you've been saying is just talking. I'm not sure if it's more my industry, which is IT, PC, break fix, and networks, but maybe you can give some suggestions. So Jonathan is working in IT, he's fixing PCs, he's seeing a lot of conversation, having a hard time getting business on social media.
Well, I know Jonathan, absolutely gorgeous, by the way, but I think that it's the amount of time, but you shouldn't be targeting IT people when you're in IT. You should be targeting me. You should be targeting Heather. Everybody out there knows somebody who either has a business that would need IT help, or you have such a great personality that he's in my networking group. Pretend we're sitting at that table when we meet up, and you're just talking to everybody, because those people will give referrals to you. And it's the same thing as Twitter. Get that personality out there. You do need to tweet more, and I'm pretty sure I know what I'm saying when I say that. I haven't checked your Twitter, but you gotta do it more. Even if you spend an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the evenings on Twitter, spend more time on it, and I'm pretty sure that you will see a spike. But do hashtag searches for things you're interested in. Burning Man, he goes to Burning Man. Do a hashtag search for that, or whatever hashtags you people make up while you're there. And people will go to your profile and check you out. They'll see your website. They'll go to it, and they'll be like, dude, you'll get an email 2 weeks later. Met you at Burning Man, saw your website, been following you on Twitter. Can you do anything for me? I'm in Nevada, because I think that's where it is, or California. I'm so dumb about it. But stop thinking about it only as a business. Think about it as building connections, building relationships, and just getting to know people.
So hopefully that's helpful, Jonathan.
I hope so.
I hope you don't mind that we shared some of your personal business. You might not have expected us to. So, we talked about the habits of social media, or the worst habit. What are some of the biggest failures you've seen? So just the stuff that you send us girls that's just horrible, that you see people do, that's so wrong or stupid that you just want to put the big fail stamp on it. Give us an example of one of the worst things that you've seen.
The worst I have seen is, there is a company that owns a lot of restaurants in my neighborhood. I go to all of them at least once a week. I like to promote mom and pops. I like to promote local businesses. And I check in on Swarm. They never tweet to me, but like a week or two later, they'll retweet my check-in on Swarm, and they don't say, hey, thanks for coming, or what'd you eat, things like that. These are restaurants that have a big following. It has nothing to do with their Twitter, that's for sure, because these people, if they based their business on their Twitter practices, they would have been gone. But they never interact, and their Facebook posts go to their Twitter feed. There's no interaction whatsoever. There's no social on their Twitter feed, and it's frustrating for me because I'm such a big fan of theirs, but then I'm the social media junkie, and that's important to me too. So that's one of the biggest failures, and I see it a lot, but that one sticks in my brain this week because it just happened on Monday.
I think what people don't realize is, especially if you're not, if you don't have just like tens of thousands of followers and lots of things to respond to, then when you ignore someone who says something positive about your business or just talks to you in general, and you don't even give as much of a response as, a thanks, it's really the same as if I walked up to you in your restaurant and you're the owner and I tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, this meal was great, I really enjoyed it, and you didn't even turn around and acknowledge me. It's the exact same thing.
Yep.
Not acceptable to just ignore people. If someone's out there mentioning you and they're recommending you for another person to use, this one's high on my list right now, even though I don't tweet that often. I have recommended a certain software tool and have mentioned their name a dozen times over the past week, and not even a thanks or a favorite or anything to acknowledge that, we hear you and we appreciate it, and, keep it up. It's really very rude. It's the same as just simply ignoring the person behind you.
It really is, and I don't get paid for this or anything, but that's why I use Sprout Social, because they have a couple accounts, and if you tweet to just Sprout Social with a question or something, they'll say, hey, Amy, I'm not the expert on this. Here's our help account.
Mm-hmm.
Here's our technical account to tweet to, and they tweet back within a minute. And to me, it's like, you know what? I pay them a lot of money every month because I use them for Twitter. They earn it with me because they are there and they're responding. So like you said, you could go up to someone and tap them on the shoulder. Of course, with restaurants, they're worried more about their Yelp reviews than actually being social, but that's a whole other thing we don't even want to talk about. But you're right. You have to keep track of people talking to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, two things that bother me, and I'm my own worst client, so I really can't say too much, but having a social media account that's just abandoned, or having one that you're only using to self-promote and you're not having a conversation with anyone and you're not acknowledging the people who are mentioning you or talking to you or recommending you to other people, it's just so rude. It's definitely.
It makes you a douchebag. Who wants to be a douchebag? Not me.
Yeah, don't be a DB on Twitter.
Yeah, don't be a DB. I forget, you're the mom and I'm the one without it, so I say douchebag and you say DB.
All right, so we're running close to our 30-minute mark here. Before we wrap up, Amy, how can people find you? How can they get more information about your services, your classes, and your coaching?
You know, you can just follow me on Twitter, at the Fabulous One, all spelled out, one word. I also have the Fab Social, one word, everything spelled out. And my Gmail is fabulousamy@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page. You can just look for the Fab Social. You can friend me. I am out there. There's no way that anyone who's watching this right now who needs help couldn't find me. And we're on Google+, so you can always message me through there as well.
Very good. And what kind of services outside of what we talked about at the beginning of the call do you offer?
You know, the thing I really love doing is the coaching, is just training somebody how to do social media for themselves. Because you know what? When I teach them that, they're going to give me a referral. But I just, you know what? I just want people to have their eyes opened to the world of social media and understand that it's such a rich way to build your business and build your brand. But I pretty much do anything to do with social media. I don't even think I could make a list.
Awesome. Well, that is the end of this show, unless, Amy, you have any last words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with.
You know what? Be social or get off the pot. Delete it or be social, because if you don't delete it, if you don't use it, it just makes you look worse. So get rid of it.
Awesome. We'll be back next Wednesday at noon Central. We will have Nick Augustine with Lone Star Content here in the Denton area, and we'll also have some people from Square 205, which is another Denton-based marketing agency. We'll be talking about how to use Denton or really any small town as a leveraging point for your business, how to grow and work with clients both in town and across the rest of the country. So I hope you see you next week at noon on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.